The nursery was empty. Not messy, not rearranged. Empty. The crib that had sat beneath the window since November, the one Nathan spent an entire Sunday assembling while cursing softly at the instruction manual, was gone. The mobile with the small silver stars, the stack of folded onesies on the changing table. Gone. All of it. Nathan Reeves stood in the doorway of what used to be his daughter's room, and felt something cold move through him that had nothing to do with the Chicago winter pressing against the windows. He loosened his tie with one hand. His briefcase hit the floor. "Serena," he called. His voice came out flatter than he intended. Nothing. The house answered him with the particular silence of a place that has been deliberately left. He walked to the kitchen. On the marble island, she'd picked that marble herself, standing in a showroom in Wicker Park, 8 months pregnant, her hand pressed to the small of her back. There was a single envelope, white. His name written in her careful handwriting. "Nathan, by the time you find this, we're already gone. Don't call. Don't look. My attorney will reach out when it's time. Serena." He read it 3 times. Then he noticed what was beside the envelope. A silver USB drive, small and ordinary, sitting there like an afterthought. He didn't plug it in yet. He already suspected he wasn't going to like what was on it. 18 months earlier, Serena Voss had moved to Chicago, believing that a fresh start was something you could pack in boxes and haul up 4 flights of stairs. She had married Nathan Reeves at 31. Quickly, maybe. In the way that made sense when you were in love with someone who knew exactly what he wanted and moved toward it without hesitating. He was a senior partner at an architectural firm downtown, the kind of man who drew skylines for a living and carried himself like he'd already decided how the room should look before he walked into it. She had been a pediatric occupational therapist, good at her work, steady-handed with frightened children, patient in ways most people weren't. The apartment he'd chosen before they married was beautiful in the way that costs money to maintain. Glass walls looking out over the lake, a kitchen with more counter space than she'd ever use, a guest room that quickly became a nursery when, 6 weeks after the wedding, the test came back positive. Nathan had hugged her. She remembered that clearly, the hug. Not the look on his face before he arranged it into something warmer. The first crack was small enough to explain away. She'd missed a patient session to attend a firm dinner he'd forgotten to mention until the morning of. She scrambled, rescheduled, arrived at the restaurant, still pulling on her earring. He'd introduced her to his colleagues with his hand on her waist, and later, walking home, told her quietly that she'd seemed distracted. "I was distracted," she said. "You gave me 4 hours' notice." He'd nodded slowly, the way people do when they're filing something away rather than accepting it. She told herself it was the pressure. The firm was pitching a major project. A mixed-use development on the north side, the kind of thing that would put Nathan's name on buildings for the next decade. She didn't want to be the reason his focus broke. When her belly grew, his attention shrank in almost perfect proportion. Late nights became the rule. The dinner conversation, when there was dinner conversation, became about the project, the clients, the board. She'd sit across from him in the kitchen they'd chosen together and feel like a guest who'd stayed past the point of welcome. He stopped asking how she felt. She stopped expecting him to. The night she first saw Diana Cho, Serena was 7 months pregnant and wearing the only dress that still fit over her stomach. A soft green wrap that she'd bought on a whim in October and wore too often since. Nathan had insisted she come to the firm's winter gala at the Langham. She'd agreed because she still believed then that showing up for each other was the whole point of a marriage. The ballroom was the kind of room that made you feel like your shoes weren't nice enough. Serena moved slowly through the crowd, one hand resting on the side of her belly. Nathan had been absorbed within minutes the way he always was in rooms like this, gravitating toward the people who mattered, the ones who could sign things. She found a quiet spot near the end of the bar and ordered sparkling water and tried not to feel conspicuous. That's when she saw her. Diana Cho moved through the room differently than other people. Unhurried, composed. She wore a black dress cut to make every movement look deliberate, and her dark hair was pinned with the kind of careful carelessness that took a long time to achieve. She was an associate architect at a competing firm. Serena would learn that later. What she registered in the moment was simpler. Nathan saw Diana from across the room and changed. He straightened. His expression opened. He crossed toward her with a smile that Serena recognized from 3 years ago, before the apartment, before the pregnancy, before whatever had quietly gone wrong. Diana leaned in when he reached her, said something close to his ear. Nathan laughed, a real laugh, the kind with breath behind it. Serena watched him place a hand on the small of Diana's back. The gesture lasted 4 seconds. She counted. She turned away and looked at the lake through the ballroom windows and told herself it could mean nothing. Touch was nothing, laughter was nothing. But she didn't approach him for the rest of the evening. And when they left together, she kept her eyes on the sidewalk, and he didn't ask why she was quiet. The weeks after the gala passed the way bad things do. Slowly, with mounting evidence, she kept trying to explain away. A dinner reservation for 2 at a Japanese restaurant on the river, the receipt from which she found folded in his jacket pocket while doing laundry. A text notification she saw by accident. I keep thinking about what you said. D. The way he sometimes came home with his collar damp, like he'd splashed water on himself in a hurry. The way he held his phone screen down on the table. She didn't confront him. She was 8 months pregnant and afraid of what happened next if she was right. Instead, she cooked dinner one Thursday. His favorite braised short ribs, the kind that took 4 hours, and set the table and waited. He texted at 7:43, running behind. Don't hold dinner. She turned off the stove, sat in the kitchen alone. Ate standing over the counter because sitting down felt too formal for one person. When he came home at 10:15, he smelled like cigarette smoke and something floral she didn't recognize. He said he'd been with clients. He walked past the still-set table without comment and went to bed. She washed the dishes and told herself, one more chance. Give him one more chance to be someone she hadn't been wrong about. Their daughter arrived on a Tuesday, 3 weeks early, during a sleet storm that turned the city gray. Serena had woken at 2 a.m. with contractions that came fast and serious. She'd called Nathan 4 times. Voicemail. A 5th time. Voicemail. She'd called a car service herself, texting him while she waited in the lobby of their building, one hand braced against the mailboxes. He arrived at the hospital at 6:17 a.m., 4 hours after she'd checked in, 2 hours after their daughter had already arrived. His hair wasn't disheveled. It was combed. He'd clearly been home to change. She's beautiful, he said at the incubator, and Serena watched his face for something. Guilt, relief, the weight of having missed it. But what she found was closer to relief that the situation seemed manageable. The nurse who had been with Serena through the delivery, a woman named Patrice, who had the manner of someone who had held 1,000 hands through 1,000 hard hours, looked at Nathan and looked at Serena and didn't say anything. But she refilled Serena's water, without being asked, and squeezed her hand once before leaving the room. And that small human kindness broke something open in Serena's chest that she had been working very hard to keep sealed. The first weeks home were a fog shaped like exhaustion. Nathan worked. Serena fed the baby, soothed the baby, watched the baby breathe. She did it alone in the 3 a.m. dark while the city hummed outside. She did it alone in the kitchen while he sat at his desk with the door closed. She did it alone so thoroughly that alone stopped feeling like an absence and started feeling like a condition. She tried to tell him once. I think I'm not doing okay, she said one evening. He was putting on his jacket, heading back to the office at 8 in the evening. He looked up. You should sleep when the baby sleeps. She hadn't been asking for a sleep tip. That was the last time she tried. The night she found out the full truth, she hadn't been looking for it. Their daughter had finally gone down at 11 p.m., and Serena moved through the apartment in the quiet relief of that small mercy. She needed her phone charger, which she thought she'd left on the desk in Nathan's office. She slipped in without turning on the overhead light, reaching for the desk surface. His laptop was open. She wouldn't have looked. She genuinely wouldn't have. But a notification pulsed across the screen before she could turn away. A message from Diana, and below it, a long thread already visible, because he hadn't logged out. She looked. The photographs came first, dozens of them organized in folders. Restaurants, a hotel lobby, the kind of long weekend that takes planning. The timestamps made her throat close. 3 of the pictures were dated the week she had been home with a newborn. One was from the night she'd gone into labor. The documents came after, nested deeper in the thread. A file labeled Property Review, RV. She opened it. It was a summary prepared by a family law consultant. Not his firm's letterhead, a private one, outlining how to structure assets ahead of a divorce in a way that would limit her access to the accounts she didn't know existed under his name alone. There were notes in his handwriting in the margin, stars next to certain paragraphs. He'd been planning this before their daughter was born. Serena set the laptop down exactly as she'd found it, closed nothing, changed nothing, walked to the nursery, stood at the edge of the crib and looked at her daughter's sleeping face. 7 weeks old, eyebrows still new-looking, fingers curled against her chin, and said nothing out loud because there was nothing adequate to say. She went back to bed. She didn't sleep, but she was no longer afraid in the same way. Something that had been pooled and shapeless inside her for months had organized itself into something hard and purposeful. She was going to leave. She'd been surviving this marriage. It was time to survive past it. The next morning, she pushed the stroller to her daughter's follow-up appointment at Northwestern. Coming down the corridor afterward, she nearly collided with Dr. Patricia Ossie. Patricia was the head of pediatric rehab. The woman who had hired Serena 4 years ago, mentored her through her first difficult cases, and told her, once over coffee, that the most important thing a woman in a hard situation could do was resist the urge to manage other people's comfort at the expense of her own survival. Serena had thought she was talking about work. Patricia took one look at her in the hallway and said, "When did you last eat a full meal?" Serena opened her mouth, closed it. "My office," Patricia said. 10 minutes. It was in that office, with the door shut and the baby asleep in the stroller beside her, that Serena finally said out loud what she had been carrying. The late nights, the delivery room, the documents, the photographs. Patricia listened without interrupting. She had the gift of that, of making you feel like the words mattered. When Serena finished, Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I need to tell you something I've never told anyone here. 12 years ago, I went through something close to what you're describing. My ex-husband worked in finance. By the time I understood what he was doing legally, he had rerouted enough that my attorney said we'd be fighting for years." She paused. "We did fight. I won. But I lost years I didn't have to lose. Don't wait as long as I did." She reached into her desk drawer and took out a card. "This man helped me when I didn't know who to trust. He does pro bono family law for women in situations like this. His name is Ray Calloway. Call him today, Serena. Not tomorrow." Serena took the card. Her hand wasn't shaking, which surprised her. Ray Calloway looked like someone's friendly uncle. Rumpled blazer, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, a coffee mug from a public radio station. But the way he listened was the opposite of casual. He heard everything, asked 3 precise questions, and then spent 12 minutes outlining what Serena needed to do and in what order. First, documentation. You've already seen it. Now you need copies, not on any device connected to his network. We use an encrypted cloud drive. I'll set it up. Second, don't change behavior. He should believe everything is normal. Third, financial. He's been structuring things. We'll get a forensic accountant. You're not as trapped as he wants you to believe. Fourth, he set his pen down. You need somewhere to go. Somewhere he can't trace quickly. Do you have anyone outside Chicago? She thought. Her sister in Nashville. But Nathan knew about her sister. I have someone who might help, Ray said. Her name is Gloria Marsh. She runs a network for women leaving marriages like yours. Private housing, identity buffer while the legal process starts. She has an apartment in Evanston. He paused. She does this because her daughter needed it once, and no one had built anything like it yet. Serena looked down at her daughter in the stroller. Tell me what to do, she said. All of it. I'll do it. The next 3 weeks were the most precise she had ever lived. Every action had a purpose. Every choice was measured. She moved 6 changes of her daughter's clothes to a bag at the bottom of the closet over the course of 10 days. 1 onesie at a time, never enough to notice. She photographed every document she found on his laptop during the 2 windows when he was in the shower and the screen was still unlocked. She opened a checking account at a bank Nathan had never used, in a branch 2 neighborhoods away, and deposited cash from their grocery budget over 4 visits. She was polite at dinner. She asked about the North Side project. She laughed at the right moments. She gave him nothing to read in her face. There was one close call. She had been sorting through the diaper bag at the kitchen table, reorganizing items she'd moved from the nursery, when Nathan came in unexpectedly at 6 p.m. He stood in the doorway watching her for a moment too long. "You're reorganizing a lot lately," he said. Serena looked up with the mild expression she'd been practicing. "The pediatrician said to keep the bag stocked in advance, in case she spikes a fever." She turned back to the bag. "You'd know that if you came to any appointments." It was a calculated jab. She needed his irritation to outrun his suspicion. It worked. He set his jaw, walked to the refrigerator, and didn't mention the bag again. But that night she found a folder on the dining table she hadn't seen before. Custody, preliminary notes, his handwriting. 2 pages of bullet points. She texted Ray at midnight, moving the timeline up. "We go Friday." His response came in 4 minutes. "Confirmed. Gloria's driver will be at the corner of Maple and Elm at 7:15 a.m. Watch for the gray Volvo. You'll have 11 minutes from when he leaves." She didn't sleep Thursday night. She sat in the nursing chair in the dark with her daughter against her chest and listened to the sounds of the building. The elevator, someone on the floor, above moving through their apartment, the distant sound of the city. She ran through the plan the way you practice something until it becomes reflex. Duffel bag. Documents in the inner pocket. Stroller. Don't take too much. Leave what he expects to be there. At 6:40 a.m., Nathan came out of the bedroom nodding his tie. He poured coffee. He didn't look at her with any particular attention, which told her his suspicion from Tuesday had passed. Or he'd decided to let it. "Early meeting," he said. "Okay," she said. She handed him his travel mug. She did not meet his eyes. He walked out. The lock clicked. She counted to 30. Then she moved. The duffel bag was under the bed. The document envelope was already in the stroller's undercarriage. She lifted her daughter from the bassinet, wrapped her against her chest in the carrier, and put the stroller down the hallway. She picked up the envelope she'd addressed to Nathan and left it on the kitchen island beside the USB drive she'd loaded with every file she'd photographed. She'd given the original copies to Ray 3 days earlier. She walked out of the apartment at 7:08. The hallway was empty. The elevator was waiting. The lobby doorman looked up as she came through. "Early start," he said. "Appointment," she said, and kept walking. The air outside was cold and still. She pushed the stroller east along Maple and made herself walk at a normal pace. 1 block. Her daughter made a small sound against her chest, half asleep, trusting in the motion. The gray Volvo was at the corner. The back door opened before she reached it. A woman in her 60s with silver hair and a calm face leaned across the seat. "Serena," she said. "Yes, I'm Gloria. Get in." The city moved past the tinted windows and grew smaller, and Serena allowed herself one look at the skyline, the one Nathan had drawn his career on, and then turned to face forward. Nathan found the envelope at 8:30 p.m. when he came home. He found it the way people find things they've been quietly dreading. He saw it before he'd even taken off his coat, like some part of his brain had been scanning for it. He read the note once. Then he saw the USB. He plugged it in. The folder structure took him 8 seconds to understand, and then his face changed in the way that faces change, when a person realizes the story they've been telling themselves has been wrong about who was in control. The photographs, the documents, the receipts he'd saved in a folder he'd named something innocuous. The audio file, dated 6 weeks ago, his voice in their kitchen, a call he'd thought was private, discussing with someone how to present the separation in a way that painted Serena as emotionally unstable. She had recorded it from the hallway. "She planned this," he said to the empty kitchen. "She planned all of it." He called Diana. She didn't answer. He called his personal attorney. He left a message. He stood at the window and looked at the lake, and understood for the first time that he had not been maneuvering anyone. He had been maneuvered. Gloria Marsh's apartment in Evanston was on the 3rd floor of a brick building, 2 blocks from the lake. It smelled like cedar and old books, and something faintly like cinnamon. It had a crib already set up in the smaller bedroom. That first night, Serena fed her daughter at 2 a.m. in the dark of the strange, quiet apartment, and felt something she hadn't felt in months. The specific piece of being somewhere her name was only hers. Gloria checked in the next morning. She brought a bag of groceries and a folder of practical information, a temporary prepaid phone, a list of contacts, a step-by-step guide to the first weeks. She'd built the guide herself, over years. "Why do you do this?" Serena asked, watching her set orange juice on the counter. Gloria paused with the refrigerator door open. "My daughter left a marriage like yours. She made it out. But she had no one. She slept in her car for 11 days before she found a shelter that had space. She closed the refrigerator. I had money and I had time, and I didn't build something fast enough. She's okay now. But I think about those 11 days every single time I hand someone that folder. Serena held her daughter a little tighter. Thank you, she said. It wasn't enough. She said it anyway. 2 years passed in a quiet that felt, to Serena, like breathing for the first time after a long time underwater. She returned to occupational therapy, a practice in Evanston that worked with children with developmental delays, smaller than her old caseload, steadier. She walked to work. She knew her neighbors. She cooked dinner at 6 and ate it, while her daughter threw peas at the table with the focused determination of a scientist. Ray kept her updated through the legal process in careful, factual emails. Nathan had hired an aggressive attorney. He'd contested. He'd argued instability. The audio recording she'd made in the hallway, 32 seconds of his voice, planning, had been, as Ray put it, determinative. The custody hearing took place on a gray April morning. Serena sat beside Ray in a courtroom in the Daily Center and looked straight ahead. Nathan sat across the room. He looked like a man who had been trying to sleep on a tilted surface for 2 years. He looked at her once, early in the session, with an expression she didn't let herself interpret. The judge was a woman in her late 50s, with close-cropped gray hair, who asked sharp questions and didn't seem interested in nonsense. When Nathan's attorney argued that Serena had removed the child from the marital home without consent, the judge looked up. She notified him in writing the morning she left, the judge said. She provided her attorney's contact information. She made the child available for a supervised visit within 30 days of filing. What grounds do you have for that characterization? Nathan's attorney moved on. When the decision came, it was clear and it was thorough. Primary physical custody to Serena. Nathan granted scheduled visits contingent on completion of a parenting evaluation. Financial disclosure revealed assets he hadn't listed in initial filings. Sanctions. Restitution. His attorney's face went carefully blank. Nathan stood when the judge left the bench. He looked at Serena across the room for a moment. She thought he might say something. Instead, he turned and followed his attorney out the door. Ray exhaled beside her. That, he said, was as clean as I've seen. Serena looked at the table. Her hands were steady. 6 months later, she was back in Chicago for a pediatric therapy conference. A real one, with a panel she'd been asked to join, something she hadn't expected and couldn't quite believe. She walked into the hotel on Michigan Avenue in a blazer she'd bought in February, her daughter home with Gloria and a babysitter, and she felt almost like herself. A version of herself she hadn't met before. In the lobby, she turned a corner and walked directly into Nathan. He stopped, so did she. He was thinner. He'd grown a beard, which didn't suit him. He looked at her with the complicated expression of someone who had rehearsed this moment and found the rehearsal useless. "Serena," he said. "Nathan," she said, a pause. "You look well," he said carefully. "I am," she said, which was true. He looked like he had things to say. Explanations, maybe, or the particular category of apology that is really a request for absolution. She recognized the shape of it forming on his face. "The next conversation we have," she said quietly, "will be about our daughter's schedule. Have your attorney call Ray." She walked past him into the conference hall. Her heart rate was 40 beats above normal. By the time she reached her seat at the panel table, it had steadied. She sat down and straightened her name card and looked out at the room filling with people who had come to hear what she knew. And what she knew, she had earned.